There are times in life when silence comes without warning. The children have grown up, and the house that was once filled with laughter is now left with the ticking of the clock. The schedule is no longer busy, and the phone rings less often. At first, this quietness can be unsettling, as if you're being left behind in a world that's moving too fast. But then one day, you suddenly realize, in the very absence of everything, there are so many things to begin reflecting on. When the loud noises fade away, the smallest sounds, the ones we've long ignored, begin to speak up. The sound of breath, the sound of the heart, the soft call of things we once dreamed of, regretted, or forgot. And it is in this silence that I rediscovered someone I had long forgotten: myself. If you too are in a phase with more empty spaces, more quiet moments, then this video may be a small corner just for you. Here, there is no grand advice, nothing profound. Just a few small stories about the days when I learned to sit still, to choose what to keep, and let go of what I don't need. And perhaps, in those stories, you'll find a part of yourself, the one who has walked through many noisy years, only to now want to live slowly, deeply, and enough. I began to hear my heart clearly. I don't remember exactly when I began to change. I only remember a period when my heart felt noisy, even though everything outside was completely quiet. There were no little children running around the house, no frantic work, no phones ringing at midnight. But in my mind, there were still so many things that hadn't stopped. Old worries, unfinished stories, small unnamed sorrows, lingering like the soft, endless sound of rain falling. Then one day, as I was sitting alone in the kitchen, I heard the sound of a spoon gently tapping the side of a bowl. A tiny sound I had never noticed before. It rang out so clearly, as if waking me from my chaotic thoughts. I paused, listening again, and this time, I didn't just hear the spoon, I also heard my own breath, the wind blowing through the crack in the door, my heart quietly trying to say something no one had listened to for a long time. Since that day, I've paid more attention, not to analyze or figure everything out, but just to listen and see how I feel today. Am I tired? Am I sad? Is there something I'm grateful for? Is there something I'm still holding on to that maybe it's time to let go of? When I was younger, I often ignored my inner voice because I was too busy living for others. Being a mother, a wife, a daughter, playing all the roles, always thinking I had to be strong, had to endure, had to sacrifice. But when all the roles began to fade, when the spotlight of life dimmed and only I remained backstage, I realized, for all those years, I had forgotten to ask myself one simple question: am I okay? And when I learned to sit still and listen for that answer, I began to feel my heart calm down. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need anyone to understand. I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to look at myself and accept, without judgment, without regret, without rushing. To accept even the things I didn't do, the words I didn't say, the wounds that still haven't healed. Listening to my heart is not a grand act. It's a slow, gentle journey, not loud at all. But because of that, I began to live more deeply, no longer caught up in others, no longer feeling empty when no one calls my name, because I've learned to call myself back, quietly, but with great tenderness. Lesson 1. Silence is the healing. I once had a close friend named Rose. She was a few years older than me, a retired elementary school teacher, soft-spoken and full of warmth. After her husband passed away, I often visited her. In those early days, she talked a lot. About him, about old memories, about the things she wished she had done differently. She spoke as if she were afraid to forget. I just sat and listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes not knowing what to say, except offering a gentle squeeze of her hand. Then one day, I came by and found her house unusually quiet. No music, no TV. She was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch, holding a small notebook. When she saw me, she smiled, a softer, more peaceful smile than usual. I asked, "You don't talk about him much these days." She replied, "I realize some things are meant to be said only to myself." That answer left me quiet for a moment, not because I didn't understand, but because I was surprised. This was someone who once needed to speak every small pain, now sitting in such calm. I started noticing other changes. She replanted flowers in her front yard, tidied up her old kitchen, went on evening walks by herself. It wasn't that she had stopped grieving. She was healing, not with words anymore, but with silence. Her story made me reflect on myself. In the past, when memories rushed in and my heart felt heavy like a stone, I always wanted to call someone. But there were days when no one picked up, no one was free to listen. So I sat in silence, and in that silence, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel worse. In fact, I felt myself slowly finding balance again, like a child who stops crying after realizing no one is scolding them. I began to understand something. Some pain becomes deeper the more we speak of it. But the sorrow we quietly hold has a chance to soften. Not because silence is better, but because sometimes only we can truly understand ourselves. And silence, when it's a choice, not a burden, can become the safest place for a tired soul to rest. Rose once said to me in a whisper, "The moment I could sit quietly with my pain, I knew I was beginning to heal." And I believe each of us at this age will reach a moment like that, when we no longer need to explain everything or be advised or be comforted. We just need peace. And that peace, that quiet, might just be the greatest gift that growing older has to offer. Lesson 2. Silence helps me filter out what is really important. I used to keep the TV on all day, not because I was truly watching, but because I was afraid of the silence. I'd start with the morning news, move on to midday reports, switch to entertainment in the afternoon, and end the day with social commentary. Sometimes, I'd wash the dishes while the TV talked to itself, as if just having voices in the house meant I was still part of something. I thought it meant I was staying informed, staying connected to the world. But then one day, my young granddaughter came to visit, sat quietly for a bit and said, "Grandma, your house is too loud." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She picked up a book and walked outside to sit on the porch. After a while, curiosity led me to follow her. She wasn't on her phone, didn't ask for the TV. She just read, quietly, listening to birds chirping and the wind rustling the leaves. I sat beside her, said nothing. I turned off the TV, turned off all the familiar noise, and for the first time in a long while, I truly heard the silence. It wasn't frightening, it was surprisingly soothing. It felt like my mind was drying out in the sunlight after being soaked for so long by constant noise. That's when I realized, not everything I hear every day is necessary. So many stories come and go, here today, forgotten tomorrow. So much news that stirs worry, anger, or frustration, but leaves behind nothing but exhaustion. There was a time my daughter came home and talked about her work. I listened, but my mind was still caught up in something I'd seen earlier, a disturbing headline, some commentary that lingered. After she left, I felt a pang of regret. I had been there, but I hadn't truly been present, and that moment, just hearing my child talk about her life, was the thing that should have mattered most. Since then, I've started living with a bit more quiet, not cutting everything off, but choosing more carefully, choosing what I really want to hear, what I want to hold in my heart. Not gossip, not noise, but the kind of things that make me feel warm, peaceful, and remind me that the world still holds kindness. I don't read all the news anymore. I don't leave the TV running all day. I don't join every conversation. And strangely, I feel lighter, not isolated, not left out, just more grounded, more present. Silence hasn't taken anything from me. It's helped me see more clearly what's truly worth keeping. It's helped me recognize the moments I used to miss, distracted by things that never belonged to me. Most of all, it's helped me be present, with myself and with the people I love. You don't always have to speak to show you care. Sometimes it's the quiet that brings the heart home. If you're at a stage in life where things are starting to slow down, don't rush to fill the space with noise. Give your heart room to breathe. Allow yourself to choose. At this age, we don't need to know everything. We just need to hold on to what feels true. Time isn't as long as it once was, which makes it even more important to fill it with fewer things, but things that really matter. And sometimes, what matters most only shows up when we sit still long enough to hear it. Lesson 3. Silence is not resignation, it is freedom. When I was younger, whenever something didn't go the way I wanted, I had the urge to speak up immediately. I liked clarity, fairness, getting things out in the open, especially in the family. If I saw something I thought was wrong, I'd say it. If my children said something that hurt me, I would respond right away. I used to believe that staying silent was a sign of weakness, of giving in, of letting others do whatever they pleased. But then one day, during a family gathering, my daughter and I had a small disagreement. It wasn't loud, but the mood shifted. Normally, I would have said something back, but that day, for some reason, I just stayed quiet. I looked at her, grown tired, juggling so many roles, and I thought, I don't need to win this conversation. I didn't say anything more. I just poured her another glass of water. Later, when we sat next to each other in the kitchen, she gently touched my hand and said, "I know I upset you, but thank you for not yelling." That simple sentence caught me off guard. And from that moment on, I realized that silence wasn't giving up, it was letting go. There are things that, the more you try to explain, the less people understand. The more you insist on being right, the more disconnected you feel. But when you pause, not because you have nothing to say, but because you know what's worth holding on to, then that silence is no longer about resignation. It becomes a kind of freedom. Freedom from the need to always be right. Freedom from expecting others to understand. Freedom from the habit of pleasing everyone. And in that saying nothing, your heart feels lighter, and sometimes, the space between two people grows closer. I began to apply this to other relationships too. Sometimes friends disappointed me. In the past, I would have called them, demanded explanations, cleared the air. Now, I choose silence. Not to cut them off, but to avoid adding more hurt. Sometimes, silence is the kindest goodbye. Other times, it's a way to preserve a relationship. Not too close, but not lost either. Growing older has taught me something unexpected. It's not the relationships where we talk the most that last the longest, but the ones where we know when to stop. To know that not everything needs your voice, not every disagreement needs a winner, and not everyone will understand what you feel. So sometimes it's best to hold it quietly for yourself. If someone thinks silence means surrender or weakness, they probably haven't experienced the power of letting go of a sharp word and preserving a connection. Not because you're fragile, but because you've grown strong enough not to need to win. Silence, when it comes from calmness and understanding, is a beautiful kind of freedom. Freedom in your mind, freedom in your relationships, and most of all, freedom from the things no longer worth carrying. At this age, that freedom is the greatest reward. How I practiced? Not everyone learns how to slow down right away, especially not after a lifetime of moving fast, speaking often, worrying constantly, chasing after so many voices. Stillness, if it doesn't arrive by choice, often comes through change, through loss, or through a day when your heart no longer feels drawn to noise. But to truly live with that stillness, not awkwardly, not sadly, not as an escape, takes small things. Things small enough not to feel like pressure, but steady enough to remind you, you're still here, living, with yourself. I no longer set big goals for my days. I just begin by not reaching for my phone the moment I wake up. Instead, I make a pot of tea and sit by the window. Not to think about anything profound, just to notice the light quietly entering a familiar room, to hear the kettle begin to hum, and to feel my heart gently warming with each breath. I write a few lines. Not long journal entries, just a sentence or two. How I'm feeling today. What made me exhale with ease. What I'm grateful for. A friend, a meal, or simply a night's sleep without interruption. I write them down so I don't forget that no matter what yesterday looked like, today, I'm still living. I walk around the house. Some days, just a few steps. Some days I sit more than I move. But I still go out, touch a new leaf, watch a bird visit, and then fly off. Small things that seem like nothing, but they make the day feel like it mattered. I don't need to do anything grand. I just need to be present. Present in my breath, in my steps, in the small turn of my wrist. I've learned not to reply to messages right away, not to turn on the TV while I eat, not to fill every silence with sound. That silence, at first, felt strange, but now it feels like a friend, as if every quiet moment is a window, letting in light, letting my spirit breathe. I clean my home more slowly. I fold clothes without rush. I wipe down a table as if I'm gently arranging my thoughts. What once felt like mundane tasks now feel like a way to sort through the clutter inside me. I call a friend, not to complain or vent, just to ask a simple question. How are you today? And when they say they too are learning to slow down, I feel a little less alone. There's no formula for peace. But I believe peace begins with very small things. A glass of water sipped slowly, a few handwritten words, a gaze out the window, an afternoon without any background noise. When I stop trying to prove that everything I do must be useful, each little action becomes deeply meaningful. Living with stillness doesn't mean disconnecting from the world. It means choosing to be present, choosing what is real, what is enough, and what brings ease. Sooner or later, we all must learn that lesson. And if we begin with these small daily moments, then stillness stops being something to fear. It becomes simply the place we return to ourselves, to a quiet kind of wholeness. There's one thing I understand very well after many years of living with silence. You don't need much to feel enough. You don't need too many voices to feel heard. You don't need too many people to feel less lonely. And you don't need too many tasks to feel valuable. All you need is to sit still for a moment each day, take a deep breath, look inside yourself. And that's enough to realize that peace isn't far away. Old age is not the end, it's just a slower pace, a time to reflect on life and choose what we truly want to hold on to. Silence to me is not emptiness. It's a space for the mind to breathe, a gift that younger people might not dare to embrace, but one that older people should welcome, with full control, gently and wisely. If you're listening to this, perhaps you're searching for something for yourself, a reminder, a peaceful corner, or a sense of empathy. So, believe me, you're not alone. There are many people, everywhere, living with the same kind of silence as you. And they are not lonely, they're simply listening to themselves. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. If anything in these words has warmed your heart, comforted you, or made you realize something small, please leave a comment saying, "I'm listening to myself" below. And if you want to join the journey of living peacefully and gently, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video with the people you love. Because sometimes, all it takes is a little silence, enough to change an entire day, or even the rest of your life.